I was 19 and finally had enough saved up for my first car. Nothing fancy, just a beater that could get me to work and back without needing my parents to drive me everywhere. My budget was around $3,000, so I wasn't exactly shopping at dealerships. Craigslist became my daily routine, scrolling through listings of cars that were older than me, hoping to find something decent. One afternoon, I found what looked like a solid deal: a 2003 Honda Civic manual transmission, listed for $2,200. The mileage was just under $90,000, which for a car that old seemed pretty reasonable. The photos looked clean too, nothing obviously wrong with it. I texted the number in the ad, asking if it was still available. Instead of texting back, the guy called me within 5 minutes. That should have been my first red flag, but I was young and excited about potentially getting my first car. He sounded fine on the phone, a little quiet, kind of mumbly, but nothing that screamed danger. He answered my questions about the car, told me it ran great, no major issues, just some minor cosmetic stuff. Then he asked for my name. I told him. There was this weird pause, then he said, "Huh, that's funny, that's my name too." The way he said it was off, like he had to think about it for a second before remembering his own name. I laughed awkwardly, because I didn't know what else to do, and we finished setting up a time for me to come see the car the next day. My mom agreed to drive me since the address was about 30 minutes away in a town I'd never been to. The whole drive there, she kept asking if I was sure about this, if the deal seemed legit. Kept telling her, it's fine. People sell cars on Craigslist all the time. Looking back, I should have listened to her gut feeling instead of brushing it off. We got off the highway, and immediately the neighborhood felt wrong. Bars on windows, graffiti tagged on every other building, broken down cars sitting in yards. My mom gave me this look like, "Are you serious right now?" But we kept driving to the address. When we pulled up, it got worse. The property wasn't even a normal house. The entrance was this narrow path squeezed between two buildings, not even a real driveway, just this sketchy little road leading back to what I guess you'd call a courtyard. There were a few houses crammed together back there, all of them looking rundown and dark. I saw the Honda parked in what might have been a driveway, and that was the only reason I didn't turn around immediately. Parked and walked up to the front door. The whole place felt wrong. There weren't any lights on inside that we could see, and the windows had these thick curtains pulled shut. I rang the doorbell, and we stood there waiting. Nothing. No sound of it ringing inside, no footsteps, nothing. I was about to knock when one of the windows suddenly opened, and a man's voice said, "Door's unlocked. Come on in." I reached for the door handle, and my mom grabbed my arm. "We're not going in there," she whispered. I hesitated because I'd driven all this way and really wanted to at least see the car. But something in her voice made me stop. The voice from inside called out again, louder this time. "You coming in or what?" "I'm downstairs." He wanted us to come into this sketchy house in this sketchy neighborhood and go down to the basement to see the car. Except the car was outside in the driveway. Why would we need to go to the basement? My mom pulled me back toward our car, and I didn't fight it this time. As we were walking away, the guy's voice came from that window again. "Hey, where are you going?" "We gotta do the transaction down here." We got in the car, and my mom started backing out fast. That's when a woman came hurrying over from the house next door. She was waving at us, trying to get our attention before we left. My mom stopped and rolled down the window. The woman looked genuinely concerned, almost scared. She asked us what we were doing there, and we explained about the car. Her face went pale. She told us that guy's been living there for about 6 months, and she's been worried about him the whole time. She said random cars show up at weird hours. People go in, but she's never sure if they come back out. She's called the police twice because of suspicious activity, but nothing ever happens. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "I don't know what name he gave you, but when he first moved in, he introduced himself to me with a completely different name." We asked her what name he'd used. That it wasn't the same name he told me on the phone, not even close. This guy had lied about his identity, lured me to this isolated property, and wanted to get me down into his basement before even showing me the car or talking about price or anything. The woman told us to leave immediately and reported if we felt like something was wrong. We drove home in silence. I kept thinking about what would have happened if I'd gone down those basement stairs. Would I have come back up? Would my mom have come looking for me and ended up in danger too? The whole thing felt like a trap, like he was hoping for someone young and naive enough to just walk into his house without questioning why nothing about the situation made sense. I reported the ad to Craigslist and tried reporting it to police, but they said since nothing actually happened, there wasn't much they could do. They'd make a note of it, but that was it. For all I know, that guy's still posting fake ads, still trying to lure people into that basement. I never found out what he was planning, but I know it wasn't about selling a car. I ended up buying a car from a legit dealership a few weeks later. It cost me more money, but at least I didn't have to worry about getting murdered in someone's basement. Every time I see a Craigslist ad now that seems too good to be true, I remember that house, that voice calling from the window, and that woman's warning. Some deals aren't worth the risk. My dad was selling our old TV after we upgraded to a newer one. 55-inch Samsung, still worked perfectly fine. We just wanted something bigger for the living room. My older brother suggested putting it on Craigslist to make some quick cash instead of just throwing it away. My brother's girlfriend had used the site before, so he said he'd handle setting up the listing. He posted it for $200 with a few photos and my dad's phone number, that we figured it'd take a week or two to get any interest. 3 days later, my dad got a call from a guy who said he wanted to buy it. The guy introduced himself and asked if he could come by that night around 10 to pick it up. My dad said sure and gave him our address. My brother, my dad, and I waited outside that night with the TV ready to load. 10 o'clock came and went, no sign of the buyer. Then my dad's phone rang. Guy apologized and said he was almost out of gas. Asked if we could meet him at the gas station instead, since he was already there and wouldn't make it to our house. The gas station he mentioned was about 15 miles away, but my dad agreed. We loaded the TV into the bed of my dad's truck and headed out. When we got to the gas station, we pulled up next to the pumps where a black Nissan was parked. A tall guy, heavy-set, bald with a goatee, walked over and said he was the buyer. He looked at the TV in the truck bed and immediately said it probably wouldn't fit in his car. He suggested we just follow him to his house instead, so we could unload it there. My dad agreed without really thinking about it. We followed him out of the gas station and onto the main highway. Everything seemed normal for the first 10 minutes. Then he took an exit onto this back road I'd never seen before. No streetlights, no other cars, just trees on both sides and a road full of potholes. My brother texted my dad asking if this seemed sketchy. My dad said to just wait and see where it goes. The guy texted my dad saying his house was at the end of the road. We kept driving deeper into this isolated area, the road getting worse and worse. Finally, we came to a clearing and there was this building at the end. Calling it a house would be generous. It looked abandoned. Tall, dark, windows either broken or boarded up, no lights on anywhere. This was supposedly where this guy lived. We all got out of the truck slowly. The buyer told us to start untying the TV from the bed so we could bring it inside. My dad, my brother, and I went to the back of the truck and started loosening the straps we'd used to secure it. That's when I heard car doors opening behind us. I turned around and 3 more guys had gotten out of the Nissan. Big guys, all of them. And they were all holding guns, including the buyer. He pointed his gun at my dad and told us to give them everything we had. Wallets, phones, keys, everything. Nobody argued. My dad pulled out his wallet and tossed it to one of them. My brother and I did the same with our phones and wallets. One of the guys went through my dad's wallet and pulled out all the cash. Another one grabbed our phones. The original buyer kept his gun trained on us the whole time. Then he told us to finish untying the TV. We did. They loaded it into the trunk of their car, which apparently had plenty of room despite him claiming it wouldn't fit. The buyer looked at my dad and said, "You're gonna wait here for 30 minutes before you leave. That if we see you following us, or if cops show up anywhere near here in the next hour, we know where you live. We got your address, remember?" Then they all got back in the car and drove off, leaving us standing there in the dark with nothing. We waited about 5 minutes before we got back in the truck and drove home as fast as we could. My mom lost it when we told her what happened. My dad called the police and gave them the whole story, including the license plate number he'd memorized from the Nissan. The cops took a report and said they'd investigate, but we never heard anything after that. No arrests, no updates, nothing. The worst part is thinking about how planned out the whole thing was. The guy scoped us out at the gas station, saw there were 3 of us, and had backup waiting in his car the entire time. He picked a location far from any witnesses, down a road where no one was around. He would accidentally drive by. He knew exactly what he was doing. We were never going to sell that TV. We were targets from the moment my dad answered that first call. My family stopped using Craigslist after that. My mom made my dad promise to never meet up with strangers from the internet again for any reason. We lost maybe $400 total between the TV and the cash in our wallets, plus the cost of replacing our phones. Could have been worse. Could have been a lot worse. But knowing that guy has our old address, knowing he might still be out there running the same scam on other families, that's what keeps me up sometimes. I see those news stories now about Craigslist meetups gone wrong, and I'm never surprised. The site makes it too easy for criminals to find victims. You think you're just buying or selling something normal, and next thing you know, you're staring down the barrel of a gun in the middle of nowhere. We were lucky. Not everyone. My apartment got broken into about 3 years ago. I came home from work and immediately knew something was wrong. The front door wasn't damaged, but it wasn't fully closed either, like someone had picked the lock and didn't bother shutting it properly on their way out. I pushed it open slowly, half expecting someone to still be inside, but the place was empty and trashed. My living room looked like a tornado hit it. TV gone from the entertainment center, gaming console gone. All my games, my laptop, even some cash I'd left on the kitchen counter. I checked my bedroom, and they'd gone through there too. Grabbed my backup headphones, a watch my grandfather gave me, some other random stuff. I called the cops and filed a report, gave them a list of everything stolen, but they basically told me not to get my hopes up about recovering anything. The detective who came by said most burglaries like this never get solved because there's usually no evidence, no fingerprints, no witnesses, nothing on security cameras. He was right. They dusted for prints and found nothing useful. I was out about $3,000 worth of stuff and had zero chance of getting any of it back. Insurance covered some of it, but not everything. And my rates went up after that. About a month later, I was on Craigslist looking for a replacement TV. I couldn't afford a new one, so I was browsing the used section, trying to find something decent in my price range. That's when I saw an ad posted earlier that same day for a 40-inch Panasonic, the exact brand and size I'd had before. The price was suspiciously low too, way under what it should have been worth. But I figured maybe the person just needed cash fast. I messaged the seller and he responded within minutes, gave me his address and said I could come by that evening to check it out. The address was only about 20 minutes from my apartment, which was convenient. I drove over there after work, not really thinking anything of it beyond hoping the TV was in decent shape. The house was a mess from the outside. Lawn overgrown, paint peeling, garbage bags piled up near the garage. I almost turned around but figured if the TV worked, I didn't care how gross the guy's house was. I knocked and a guy answered, probably mid-30s, wearing a stained t-shirt and looking like he hadn't showered in days. He told me to come in. The inside was worse than the outside, stank like old food and cigarettes. Carpet had stains everywhere, piles of junk covering every surface. That he led me through the house to a back room, and that's where the TV was sitting. I walked over to examine it, and my heart stopped. It wasn't just the same brand and model. It was my TV. I recognized a small scratch on the bottom left corner of the frame that I'd accidentally put there when I first moved into my apartment. I tried to keep my face neutral while I looked around the room, and that's when I noticed other stuff. A smaller TV in the corner that looked exactly like the one from my bedroom. A gaming console that could have been mine. I casually walked over and picked it up, flipped it over, and there it was. A long scratch on the bottom of the case that I'd gotten from dropping it once. That was definitely my console. I looked at the guy and said, "This is my stuff. You robbed my apartment." His confused expression changed instantly. He got aggressive, raised his voice, told me I was crazy and needed to get out of his house. I saw him lift his shirt slightly, and there was a gun and a holster on his belt. He didn't pull it out, but the message was clear. Leave now or things get worse. I left and called the cops from my car, told them everything, gave them the address. Reminded them about my burglary report from a month ago. They said they'd send someone to check it out. 2 officers showed up about 30 minutes later, and I met them in front of the guy's house. They knocked on the door and he answered, but refused to let them in. Told them they needed a warrant, and that I was harassing him. The cops explained to me that without probable cause they couldn't force their way in. They said they'd work on getting a warrant, but it would take at least until the next day. I was furious, but there was nothing I could do. I went home feeling defeated, knowing my stuff was right there, and I couldn't get it back yet. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept researching search warrants and legal options, trying to figure out how to make sure this guy didn't just sell everything or move it before the cops came back. That I was sitting in bed on my laptop when I heard glass breaking downstairs. One of my windows. Someone had just smashed one of my windows. I knew immediately it was him. He'd followed me home or looked up my address somehow. and now he was breaking into my place. I didn't even hesitate. I climbed out my bedroom window onto the small ledge outside, hung from it, and dropped to the ground. Ran to my neighbor's apartment and pounded on their door until they answered, that I told them someone had broken into my place and I needed to call the cops. Police arrived with lights and sirens, guns drawn, the whole deal. They surrounded my building, and I gave them my spare key I kept hidden outside. They went in and cleared the apartment room by room. When they came back out, they had the guy in handcuffs. They'd found him hiding under my bed, with his gun on him. The officers told me, if I'd been home asleep when he broke in, he would have been under my bed while I was lying right above him. They didn't say it directly, but the implication was clear. He wasn't there to rob me again. He was there to make sure I couldn't testify against him. He was there to kill me. He got charged with breaking and entering, possession of a weapon during a felony. And after they searched his house with the warrant, he got charged with receiving stolen property. For all my stuff they found, turned out he had a bunch of other people's belongings too. He'd been robbing apartments in the area for months. He ended up taking a plea deal and got sentenced to 10 years. 10 years. He'll be out eventually. Probably already is out by now with good behavior. I moved to a different city about 6 months after all that. Changed my number. Didn't tell anyone where I was going except my closest family, that I check over my shoulder constantly now. Every time I hear a noise at night, my first thought is that he's back. That he tracked me down somehow and came back to finish what he started. All of this started because I was trying to replace a stolen TV on Craigslist. If I hadn't recognized my own stuff in that room, I never would have known who robbed me. But because I did, because I confronted him, he decided I needed to be dealt with. The cops told me I was lucky that I trusted my gut and climbed out that window instead of going downstairs to check. Lucky that he didn't find me before they did. I don't use Craigslist anymore. I don't meet up with strangers from the internet. And I sure as hell check under my bed every single night before I go to sleep. Some people say I'm paranoid, but they weren't there. They didn't see the look in his eyes when he realized I'd recognized my stuff. They didn't have someone break into their home with a gun just to silence them. Paranoid keeps you alive sometimes.